All right, so it looks like the joining has slowed down a little bit, so I think we're probably okay to get started. So thanks everyone for joining this session. So today's Rollbar Academy installment, we're going to talk about notifications and issue tracking. So this is really all of the integrations that we support through the outbound notifications with Rollbar. All right, so first, just some housekeeping notes about the webinar. Everyone is muted by default. We have a couple different ways of asking questions. There's the chat system, the Q&A, and if we do need to get into a deeper discussion, I can probably unmute folks once we get towards the end of the session for any custom Q&A that we need to do. But as we're going along, feel free to drop your questions in. If I can work it into the material that we're discussing, then I'll do that. If not, then I will just circle back to it. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're really focusing on all these notification things, but there's a few different categories of those. Um, so we'll start just by introducing the space, and then we'll talk about the way that we sort of compartmentalize these and the different functions that they have. All right, so first, let's just do a quick introduction. To those that may be new to the notifications, if you're following along with the Rollbar Academy series, and maybe this is a newer topic to you, just making sure it's clear what we're discussing. These are all of the different ways that Rollbar can send outbound notifications. I've got them listed here in those same sort of categorizations. But I think what's going to matter, if you haven't seen this before, we're talking about all of the settings that are managed under a given project's notifications settings menu. So all of the different integrations that were called out, we can see the badges for those, some that have already been configured. So this is the menu that we're mostly talking about, configuring the notifications and the alert rules that trigger those, and making sure that they're sent responsibly, effectively, that we're not causing noise or overlapping our alerts. We're not sending them to folks that truly don't care about those notifications. And so with that, there are some best practices that kind of hone in on the different types. So otherwise, since they are mechanically the same, we don't really have to divide them up. But the recommendations that I'm going to make are going to differ depending on what type of system we're talking about. All right, so notifications. When we talk about these, there are the different channels, but ultimately it's the same feature that goes underneath these. There are notification rules that you can configure, and depending on which integration you select for that, it's going to send to that given platform. So for all of these, there's usually some configuration required. We're not going to focus as much on that today. We have some newer video guides on our Rollbar YouTube channel that will walk you through each of the different integrations one by one. So if you do have any hangups with any of these specific integrations, if there's something that's confusing about setting up PagerDuty, then I would encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. We do have a new video for that. So that's just a general recommendation I would make there. And I believe I have my email channel disabled by default. I think this is the only one that we sort of have built in as standard. So when going to sign up, I think by default, we're going to send those to the owner, but then you would be able to choose other teams for that. So these default notifications, these are emails that go to the owners. Some folks don't consider emails all that actionable, or they just find that there's too much noise here. So that's one way to manage it. It's just to disable this altogether. But another interesting call out, when I say, some folks disable it altogether, there have been a couple of accounts I've heard of where some of the higher level management folks are receiving every single occurrence to some sort of email address that they've got set up. So that is a lot of emails. It's cumbersome, and you probably wouldn't want that sent to your direct inbox. but maybe there's some sort of special aggregation to do around that. I would probably choose a different channel, but if at any point you wanted to just get the full breakdown, that's one of your options here. And the others that we support, most of these are pretty standard. Some may not be available for the issue tracking. There are some that are sort of platform specific or limited to certain integration types. For example, I think daily here, I think that may be email only. I know it's not a Slack option. So with all of these are the templates. If there are new templates that have come up recently, if anybody has suggestions for other templates that would help them, we'd be very receptive to that. Hopefully would be able to work that in. But when I look at these, every occurrence is typically a bit too noisy. So some of the rules that folks will focus on would be new item. So this is going to be every time we see something that has not appeared in our data set before. So hopefully everyone is familiar with the term item, but we are talking here about these individual events here, and they're bundled. It's not every occurrence. So an item will have multiple occurrences. So we usually, the grouping engine is what groups them together into items. We usually want to focus at the item level with our time and investigation, because that's where the grouping engine has identified something new. So creating a new item alert, just seeing all new items, that's a great way to start. And that's what our platform is going to recommend. It actually puts in this filter here, level is greater than or equal to error. So if you're using a lot of level selection, you may want to modify or just remove this and say, I want to see all new items of all severity levels. And I may choose to just send that to myself or maybe to everyone that's an owner here. So that's just sort of a walkthrough of these. If I were to configure that, once I create it, that's added to my rule set here. I believe this is probably close to a duplication here. This is almost the same thing, just being sent to a different one. I can delete these. I can see the history of my notification rules. So if you suspect that somebody has changed it, then you'd be able to see that here. Most of these email rules have not been changed. Let's look at some of my Slack rules, and we'll probably see some variation in there. So yeah, this one I was modifying pretty heavily today, trying to test some stuff. And then it's also going to tell you this is a list of all the times that the notification rule has been triggered as well. So all of these have been successful and we're not seeing any error messages. So that means this rule is pretty well configured. All right, so hopefully folks understand what we're talking about here. So just to sort of reiterate, these are events that we detect in Rollbar through these templates, and then we're using one of these other platforms to send that notification outward. So this is for folks not having to use Rollbar to log in and discover things. Hopefully we can aid with the discovery of new items by notifying the right people at the right time. All right, so now let's look at a little more detail on the Slack messaging. This is our most capable provider, and it's probably the best choice for chat integration. So I did prepare a few examples for this, and I'll send a few of those across now. We'll just see those coming in. But I've got a very basic demo application that's set up here, and I'm basically just going to use these two donation buttons. They are designed to break right now, and we will trigger some alerts on those. So here we have two different amounts. So the $25 and the $100 donation buttons. As a part of the rules that I've configured, I've put in some filters for those that in one case we filter to see, is this coming from a certain match in my code? We'll talk more about this in detail. And then I'm actually with the Slack here, I'm formatting this message to include some of my templated fields there. So I'll make that a little larger for just a second. We can see the use of the double curly braces in fields like link, counter, and this body.amount. Those are available for reformatting this Slack message. And we do have tips on that in the docs as well. All right, so those rules are in place. Let's send across some test events. I'll just do one of each for now. All right, and I can see in Slack that I've got a couple of events that have been triggered. I pushed a new code version and changed my version before this because I did want to show that notification as well. So we're seeing a new version that was sent across here. And then I have these two Slack messages, donation failed, amount 100, and donation failed, amount 25. And this is in every occurrence notification. That's going to be noisy. There's going to be a lot of those. If somebody was continuing to just click this button over and over again, then we would see more of those stream through our system here. They come in pretty rapidly there. So that, depending on your use case, may be the rule you want to choose. Or for obvious reasons, I think folks may be able to see why new item is sometimes preferred. For this use case, my reasoning for sending every occurrence was that, every single time somebody presses that button and the donation fails, there's a very clear dollar amount being lost. So beyond the UX degradation, this is clearly affecting our pocketbooks because, we're not getting those donations as we thought we would or had hoped that we would. So that could be considered more of a high priority item that we've got to fix this because we're losing donations rapidly. So just something to think about, trying to bridge the gap between your business needs and the technical capabilities that you have. That's sort of core to the intelligent alerting, which is overarching to all these different notifications and integrations that we have, all the different types that we have between chat and issue tracking. All right, then. So I think that's probably enough about chat for now. I will watch for questions in the Q&A and in the chat section of the Zoom meeting. Feel free to drop any questions you have. Just making sure I do stay on topic. I believe the rest of this deck should look a little better with having the right text in there. For issue tracking, this is where we're talking not just about sending folks a Slack message or some type of written notification, but persisting that through to an issue or a ticket of some kind in one of those related issue tracking systems. With Rollbar focusing on code problems, we're a continuous code improvement platform. So that means that this list is usually going to correlate pretty heavily with the list of bugs. And we want to get those bugs fixed. And our process may dictate that we need a story or a ticket or something like that to track our efforts and to make sure that this doesn't get lost. So that's where I can see here I've moved over to a demo Jira domain that I've got. And I can see things like can't find variable message, respond with is not defined. So these, item 32, I think we were looking at 30 and 31 for the most part. So can see that we do have those coming through here. So in here, message is not defined. And thanks to the integration, we're also seeing a link back to our Rollbar ticket. So this here is going to link back to the item at hand. And we're actually capturing the stack trace as well. So good context has been provided to Jira as a result of a notification rule that's automatically creating this ticket. Let's step back a little bit and let's look at the Jira setup, and we'll talk about automated versus manual ticket creation. So here, what I'm doing for this account, or for this project, excuse me, is I'm taking any new item and just automatically creating a new Jira issue for that. And this approach works pretty well as long as grouping is working well for you. But sometimes there are edge cases. There may be a valid reason to not want to show or to not want to automatically move those items into tickets. If you're seeing a lot of duplicate items in Rollbar, if the grouping engine is having trouble coalescing all your items, then you probably don't want that to automatically create tickets, because then you might be getting 3 Jira issues for what is truly a single problem. And that's just duplicating work into another domain. We definitely don't want to do that. So the issue tracking systems have two implementations. There is the automated ticket creation, which is going to leverage these notification rules. So we can see here it's a slightly different rule set. We don't have an every occurrence rule here because that doesn't really make sense. But we have our core item functionality, and we can also create new issues if we see, very high occurrence rates that tend to the nth occurrence there. But if this is not a safe approach, what I can do is I can just delete this rule and then manually assign tickets to the items that I believe need them. So here, looking at my JS demo project, there is a linked Jira issue here, but what I could do is unlink this or link it with a different one. And if we're looking at a different project, let me switch to one of my others that isn't currently linked up. Let's see, I don't believe we have that in LaunchDarkly. Here, yeah, so now I'm not even seeing the integration there. So there's no button available for that. And then if I look at one of my other projects, I can see that I actually have 2 issue tracking systems linked up to one project here. So we do support multiples. And in this one, I have automated Jira ticket creation, but then for Trello, there's not a Trello card here. So I would have the option to triage and investigate this and then say, okay, I'd like to create that Trello card. So clicking that, now I've created that. I don't think I'm signed into Trello right now. So that would probably not work for me if I tried to view, but that's an authentication thing. But here, the manual linking of that, I can unlink it, switch it up. This is the more user involved approach, but if grouping is working well for you and you're spending a lot of time just clicking the button, if you just go into a lot of items and just click create ticket every time, then that would be an indicator that you want to configure these rules to allow it to do that for you. All right, so issue tracking, we do have a number of systems for that. Jira is pretty common. Trello I showed. We have GitHub and GitLab issues, Clubhouse as well. So there's a lot of options for that, making sure that whatever your team uses, we do support that. All right, so I don't think I see any questions. We'll keep moving along for now. All right, so there are a few integrations that don't really fit within the categorizations that we've discussed so far. And there's 2 main ones that I want to call out here. These are really the 2 big outliers. We do have a LaunchDarkly feature flagging integration. So you can use the Rollbar notification rules to trigger LaunchDarkly feature flags. So that's sort of an automated kill switch where you can say, if a Rollbar item has been detected with certain filters in place, then we know that our new feature flagged code is misbehaving and we need to toggle that flag. So I believe I can show my demo for that in this session. I wanted to make sure we would have time. Looks like we'll be okay on that. And then the use of the generic webhook option. It's actually more verbose. It's got a lot more data than the other options that we have, the different confined integrations. And so there's some custom stuff that you can do with that. All right, so first, let me go ahead and make just one change here to my LaunchDarkly setup, and then I think we should be okay to demo that. So for this, my notification rule is set up for new or reactivated items. And this is the item that we're going to be working with. So what I'll be doing is just resolving that so that when it does get triggered, it will be reactivated. And then just to get into LaunchDarkly, for this, I have to go to my environment here. So there's a hello button that I've got in one of these files. Let's see. What's the fastest way that I had to get to that? Sorry, I'll have to circle back to that. I forgot there was a couple of steps getting ready for that. But essentially, we have this say hello button, and this will be triggered, and we can change the targeting state for that as we trigger those events. So we'll see that in action. For now, I did set up the webhook and did want to review that. So the webhook payloads that we send from Rollbar, this is an example of an occurrence payload. And we have a lot of useful info here. This is basically the exact same data that Rollbar receives when we get that event. So we've got info like the stack trace in here. We've got the message that comes with that. So the exception message, all of the things that Rollbar captures from your code are being sent out by a webhook. So this can be used if there is an integration that we don't have, one that's commonly requested that we're still working on. It's Microsoft Teams. And it's definitely a workaround, but what you could do is potentially use something like Zapier or a Lambda function. You could custom write a Lambda function to process these events that you receive, maybe use the data in here to direct those to different teams to take different actions based off of that. So webhook notifications, similar to the other types. With these, you'll supply a URL. So you can test this. You can just go to webhook.site. It will generate a unique URL that you can use to send these events across. So I've sent across quite a few, so I don't believe I would be able to match up this exact one, or actually I can. There's the link right there. Copy this, and we can see this occurrence in the Rollbar account. So this is a helpful way of maybe speeding up that process here, where this is that raw JSON, and if I don't want to have to go into Rollbar to see that, then I can redirect that. I can send it outside of my of my system here. All right, so as we are discussing the intelligent alerting piece, I'll see if I can work towards also setting up my LaunchDarkly integration. But this is more generic. We've shown a couple of examples of this with the different alert setups, the notification rules with the amounts and stuff. But this is the most important part for responsibly configuring your alerts for reducing noise. As I mentioned earlier in the webinar, there is a lack of filtering in place for the templates that we configure. So looking here at the webhook, I don't believe any of these have really been tampered with. So we can see that this is some pretty generic alerting that we're doing. So a big problem that customers have faced, and one that they relate to us quite often, is, we're just getting too much noise from these alerts. And that's because this is a fire hose. I think with the initial setup here, you get a lot of signal, but you also get a lot of noise. And so then as a sort of a second step, once you've configured your various alerting channels, you need to iterate on the rules here, and you need to go back and see if you can split them up, redirect them to more relevant channels based on the filtering that you're doing. So whatever default channel is put in place here, we don't have to abide by that for the rules that we create. So for Slack, I can enable the one integration for my project, but then I can choose to send these rules to all of the other channels that I may have created for this. So just speaking a little more broadly on the account and project administration level and how you can help with that as well. Making sure that you do have an effective setup for your teams and users and making sure they map to the correct projects. Since each project has its own notification settings, that can be a big win right there. Just making sure that instead of having everyone assigned to all projects, you might just want to create project teams and assign those accordingly. One of the contributing factors to alert fatigue is the fact that, if you just get too many of them, you're going to start ignoring them. And so if I was receiving a ton of alerts in a channel, but 75% of them were irrelevant to me, it's very likely that I would miss one. So, that's just habituation. The more you look at those and realize that they're false alarms, the less likely you are to take any action about that. It's more likely that something that is truly relevant is going to go unnoticed to you. So this slide does show just a few of the better filters that you can use, and there's some details just about why that would be the case, why those are helpful. So I'm actually going to pause my presentation on that slide so I can work on getting my LaunchDarkly integration set up. All right, and we do have a question that just came in, so I'll answer that before sidetracking any further. So there is a way to share alert configs. If you look at the notifications menu right here, I believe it's at the bottom of this menu here. If you have a new project and there's another project and you want to copy the rules from that, you can go in here and do that. But this is a replace action. So it's probably best suited for new projects. If you've got one that sort of works as a good standard and you're setting up new microservice projects or just trying to emulate good behavior, then take the other one that has good configuration and you can potentially copy that over, do a little bit of pruning, and then you'll have a better setup then. So yeah, that's the easiest way to do that right now. And what I can say aside from that is that we are also working on adding CRUD capabilities for our alert rules. It's not something I expect to happen, I guess, extremely rapidly because we do have to make some architectural changes for that. But in order to support the Terraform functionality that we want, that's something that we have to do. So that will be coming eventually, I guess. I will be working on that myself. So doing everything I can to get that quickly. It's actually come up more common recently that larger customers need CRUD capabilities to manage those larger alert sets. So we're going to do what we can to help support that. All right, so sorry folks, I've almost got my LaunchDarkly setup going. I apologize for the lack of preparation here. I knew there was one thing I was forgetting, but with this, we should be able to see the LaunchDarkly key in action. So here I have my setup. Let's see what the actual path is there. Okay, there we go. RBLD demo. Oops, got it wrong. So with this, I feel like I'm going to fumble a little bit if I keep trying to talk and do this at the same time. So if there are any questions, feel free to add those now. Otherwise, we'll just keep looking at this here. So for this, the say hello button that I would love to be able to get to show up right now, but I've apparently missed a step somewhere. That would be showing my say hello button and then triggering that. I do have a video. Maybe I should just plug the video instead. But there will be some things that we put together for a follow-up item. So for anyone that's attending this session, you will also receive the recording, and I'll make sure that that we do have that set up as well. All right, so I'll go a little bit deeper into intelligent alerting since we do have time, and we didn't really cover that in a lot of depth. This again is, I think, the most important part of your setup. And when you start to integrate a number of systems, that's when you need to think about your use cases as well. So PagerDuty is typically, an escalation system. So with that in mind, that may be reserved for more critical notifications. You may want to configure those rules with a higher severity level, or maybe with doing more filtering in place to make sure that we have checked this. This is not being addressed somewhere else. It has reached the criteria for escalation. And sometimes it's best just to remove some of the rules in place. If they're not working well for you, you may just want to delete that and then circle back if you do find a use case for it. So make sure to review those rules. That's probably one of the main things I would recommend for folks with an active Rollbar account is go back and check on those notification rules that you do have in place. All right. So additional resources, we do have some links for learning resources, and the Rollbar YouTube link, I'll go ahead and paste that in the chat here. So if you'd like to copy that, feel free to do so. I believe we'll probably send that out as well. Call outs here, the Rollbar Academy, this is, that's the video series we're currently in. So if you are interested in seeing the other sessions, we do have those recordings available. And then the knowledge base, slightly different, but also learning material. This is more about feature isolation. So specific things that you may do. The Rollbar Academy series, these are more narrative videos about building towards, a more comprehensive account health. And for these, it's more feature isolated. All right, and I think that's everything for today. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks for your patience. I hope this has been useful. If there's any other suggestions or improvement tips for the next session, feel free to provide those in your feedback as well. All right, thanks and have a great day, everyone.